All right, so this Knife Thoughts video is going to be a review of this knife, and this is the Civivi Hypersonic designed by GTC. And Civivi sent this knife for review, and it's one that I was interested in reviewing because it is designed by GTC, or Gustavo Caccini. And the reason that I was interested in it because of that is because GTC designs are really kind of unique in their aesthetic, and also a lot of his designs are very innovative. So for example, his knife won the most innovative knife of the year at Blade Show this year, 2023, and it's called the Enigma. And then a collaboration that he is doing with We Knife called the Solid also won the collaboration of the year. So he makes some really, really unique designs, and I've never gotten to check out one of his knives or designs in person until this Hypersonic. Now, the other reason that I was interested in it is because it's a pretty big knife. So I tend to like a larger modern knife. I usually carry a modern knife and a traditional knife. So I like to have a little bit of a bigger modern knife. And you can see here on this spec sheet sent by Civivi that this knife has a 3.7 inch blade. So that's pretty big, maybe a little bit bigger than a lot of people like for EDC, but pretty much perfect for me, like right in the Goldilocks range of big enough that you can do pretty much any task that you're going to do with a folding knife, but not difficult to carry, not, ridiculously big like something, like an XL Espada from Cold Steel. Now, just to show a little bit more specs, I'm not really a specs reviewer. You can look these up. But one thing to be aware of is that on this version that I have, which is the black coated version, the blade hardness is slightly lower, basically just 1 point lower, 57 to 59 versus 58 to 60. Are you going to tell a difference in use? I don't really think so, but it's just an interesting difference that I've pointed out in my video on the Cubit, actually, from Civivi. But this does have 14C28N steel, which is a steel that Civivi is using a lot recently, and I think is a really good all-around steel. It's not a super steel like something like, even M390, but certainly, the very trendy Magna Cut. But it's a steel that's going to work really well, and it has for me. So let's move on to the knife itself. Well, I'll mention real quick that this is a stainless steel frame lock, and so that's something that I like. So titanium frame locks are, very common, I would say, in the knife world. And particularly on higher end production knives, there's a lot of titanium frame locks. Titanium frame locks are great. I'm not, discounting that. But on a budget knife, or a pretty budget friendly knife like this, I don't mind a steel frame lock. First of all, it is going to be stronger than a titanium frame lock. Titanium is stronger per weight, not overall. So that's something to be aware of. A lot of times people will talk about titanium being stronger than steel, but they leave off that it's by weight. It's not stronger than steel. This frame lock is going to be stronger than a titanium frame lock built the same way. Now, is that a huge issue? I don't really think so. I mean, it may be a little bit more so on a knife like this that is a larger knife. You might use it a little harder, but I don't think you're going to have any trouble with, not having a strong enough lock. It locks up really well. You can see here that it locks up about 50%, something like that. And being that it is a steel frame lock, you don't need a lock bar insert. So that's another, thing to be aware of. Don't worry about it not having a lock bar insert. It's not going to have the issues that a titanium lock bar interfacing with a steel blade might have. Locks up really well and has great action. Civivi, honestly, at this point, I think if you've been aware of Civivi, you know that they make knives really well. There's really no question of that. I don't recall ever having a dud Civivi that came with like major issues, and I have, gotten to check out a lot of Civivis. So it's come to be expected, at least for me, that it is, really well made, and that's the case here. It also has great action, so it has a flipper, and you can flip that open really, really nicely. I love the sound that this knife makes. Because it has that titanium frame, because it has that steel frame lock, I think that it gives it a little bit more of a thwack, and I just love that sound. And you can see that it drops closed very easily. Easy to open and close one-handed. The detent is pretty much perfect. It's strong enough that it, makes it a crispy opening, but not so strong that it makes it difficult to open. You can push on the lock bar. I kind of just pushed on the lock bar a little bit, but being that it's a larger knife, it's an issue that I haven't had. That might be the only time that I've actually missed the opening because of that. So I haven't had any issues with that whatsoever, other than right there, I guess. So it opens very smoothly. This knife came well centered, maybe ever so slightly off towards this side, but I mean like ever so slightly. And perfect lock up, no forward and back, and then even when unlocked, no side to side. Really solid. Just really well made, which again is something that I have come to expect from Civivi, and I think you can pretty much, expect that you're going to get a really well made knife when you're buying a Civivi made knife. Now, an interesting thing is that this does have a little bit where the inlay goes over the lock bar. So I think that probably functions as an over travel stop for the lock bar, but it's not really what I would call an inset frame lock or sub frame lock, whatever you want to call where a handle scale or an inlay comes up over most of the lock bar. Most of the lock bar is exposed, but a little bit is covered by that inlay. And so moving on to how this knife cut, it is really well ground. That's another thing that Civivi just does really well. They grind their knives to be used. And I use this knife a good bit, just kind of general use, carrying it and using it. And it cuts really well. I really have no complaints with that. With this long blade, you get a lot of nice continually curved edge. The 14C28 end steel again did perfectly fine, and honestly I haven't needed to sharpen it. I have stropped it slightly, but with that it came back to perfectly sharp for me. So really has cut well, and I do like this kind of maybe what you would call a reverse Tonto or a modified Wharncliffe. It's not really a Wharncliffe because it does have this hard angle here and the curved blade or curved edge, and it's not really a reverse Tonto, maybe a little closer to that, something like the Benchmade 940, but it's has that unique look that the GTC designs often have. Now, I'm not sure if this cutout here, which is, again, one of the design aesthetic things that GTC does, I'm not sure if that's made to be able to be used, but I haven't really been able to use it. I haven't really been able to get enough traction on that to thumb roll. Well, again, there it is. Sometimes that happens. Things are different while you're reviewing the knife. But that's a rare thing. So there we go. It is difficult for me. So I wouldn't, rely on being able to open it with a slow roll. And that was also the first time that I have done the middle finger flick. So I wouldn't rely on that. I would assume that this is a classic back flipper, that you're not going to be doing a reverse or middle finger flick or a thumb roll. Maybe it's possible. Maybe I'm getting a little better at it. Maybe I didn't try enough, but it's still, I would just always go with that back flipper. So cut well, opens well, and then let's move on to the design. So again, GTC knives, Gustavo Caccini, has a really unique look to his designs. They're very futuristic. So I think that that's very much the case here. It has this really unique handle shape that actually is really ergonomic also. I was really happy with that because I wasn't sure, I often say a simple handle makes for an ergonomic handle. This isn't the most complex handle out there, but it's not the most simple either. But for me, it fits really well in my hand. My two front fingers, my index finger and middle finger, fit in this area here, and then my ring finger and middle finger fit down on the other area here, and it feels good in the hand. I haven't had any ergonomics issues. The clip didn't cause any issues either. And speaking of the clip, it is a clip that I don't know Civivi has ever used before. So they got kind of a clip specifically for this knife for the aesthetic of the GTC design. And so I really do like this kind of futuristic angled look to the handle as well as to the blade that is really, the type of aesthetic that GTC designs have. They have this futuristic look to them. It reminds me kind of this knife that I have and really enjoy, the Tacray DT03. Also a very futuristic look to it, but in a little bit of a different way. The colorway that I got here on the Hypersonic with the black and green is a very classic color scheme. Maybe not as like cyberpunk as the purple on the Tacray, but very classic. I carried this a few times with this knife, the James brand. I'm forgetting the name of this one. I haven't reviewed this one yet. My brother gave it to me, but because of the similar color scheme, and I do think that black and green just look great together. And then I wanted to also show some size comparisons because, you know, you see a knife on the video and you don't know how big someone's hands are, and you see the specs, and it doesn't really mean anything until you see a comparison. So here it is compared to a couple other Civivi and Wii knives. Here is the Civivi Elementum, a modern EDC classic in my opinion. And then here is the Wii Banter, also an EDC classic. You can see that the Hypersonic is quite a bit bigger. So it is definitely a larger knife, and I'll show you compared to some classic knives more similar to its size. So here is a Rat 1, and here is a Benchmade full-size Griptilian. So you can see the Hypersonic is really, you know, a little bit bigger than both of those. And so I wanted to show you also, partly a little bit because I'm excited to have it finally, against the Spyderco Military 2. So this is the same size as the Military 1, but it is the new version. And you can see that the Hypersonic is kind of more similar in size to the Military 2. Now there's a little bit less edge length because of the way the finger choil works on the Hypersonic. It's not a 50-50 choil, but kind of similar size. Not quite as big as the Military, but definitely a larger knife. So I do appreciate that. I always like when Civivi makes some larger knives, and I've really enjoyed getting to carry and use this knife, and especially to check out this really interesting style that GTC designs have. Like I said, they do have this knife. This knife is available now, but they also have the Wii collaboration coming out soon, and it looks really great also. So I've enjoyed getting to check out this knife. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, leave any comments you have, and also make sure you subscribe to the channel so you know when I post new videos. I will have more Civivi videos soon. And click the bell, select all, so you know when I do post those videos. And last but not least, as always, don't forget to go out and do good.